"Daddy, can she be my sister?" Billionaire Dad sees a girl in a wheelchair and makes an unbelievable gesture. The car stopped in front of a green-painted iron gate. Junie pressed her face against the window glass, observing the large, simple building in front of her. "We're here," said Grayson, turning off the engine. "What is this place, Daddy?" "It's an orphanage. There are children who live here because they don't have a family." Junie furrowed her blonde eyebrows. "They don't have a mommy or a daddy." "No, sweetheart. That's why we're here today." Grayson opened the trunk and took out 3 cardboard boxes. Junie got out of the car and stood beside him, her light-colored eyes still fixed on the building. "Are these boxes for them?" "They are. They have clothes, books, and toys, things they need." "But why are we giving them things?" Grayson knelt to his daughter's level. "Because when we can help, we help. That's how we make the world a better place." Junie picked up one of the smaller boxes. "Can I carry this one?" "Of course." They walked to the entrance. The gate creaked as it opened. There was a small garden out front, with flowers that looked like they were trying to grow. A few children were playing in the side yard. "Who are they?" a dark-haired girl whispered. "They must be people bringing us stuff," an older boy replied. The front door opened before they even knocked. A middle-aged woman appeared with a genuine smile. "Mr. Morrison, how nice to see you again." "Hello, Mrs. Davies. I brought a few more things." "And who is this little princess?" Junie hid behind her father's leg. "This is my daughter, Junie. Junie, this is Mrs. Davies. She takes care of the children here." "A pleasure to meet you, dear. Would you like to come in?" They entered the main hall. It smelled of cleaning supplies and homemade food. The walls were painted a light yellow, with some children's drawings hanging on them. "I'll take these boxes to the storage room," said Mrs. Davies. "Mr. Morrison, can we talk in my office?" "Of course. Junie, do you want to come with us, or would you rather stay here?" Junie looked around. There was a large room with old but comfortable sofas and a few books on a low table. "Can I stay here?" "You can... Don't leave this room, okay?" "Okay." Grayson and the director went up a staircase. Junie was left alone in the room. She sat on one of the sofas and picked up a storybook. It was then that she noticed a small figure in the farthest corner of the room. A girl was sitting in a wheelchair looking out the window. Her almost white blonde hair fell over her shoulders, and she looked very sad. The girl had a book on her lap, but she wasn't reading. She just stared outside, as if she were looking for something she could never find. Her shoulders were slumped, and she looked very small in the big chair. Junie watched for a few minutes. The girl didn't even move. Every now and then she would bring a hand to her eyes and quickly wipe something away. This made Junie feel strange inside. The girl seemed so lonely. She remembered what her dad always said about helping when you can. Junie got up and walked slowly to the corner where the girl was. When she got closer, she saw that her eyes were a very light blue, and that she had tears caught in her eyelashes. "Hi," Junie said softly. The girl in the wheelchair turned, startled. She quickly wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. "Hi," she replied, her voice almost a whisper. "Were you crying?" The girl shook her head quickly. "No. It's okay if you were." "I cry sometimes too." The girl looked at her in surprise. "You do?" "Of course, everybody cries. My dad says it's not a shameful thing to do." "Here they say it is." "Who says that?" "The other kids. They say I cry about everything." Junie pointed to a regular chair near the window. "Can I sit here?" The girl hesitated but nodded. "You can. I'm Junie. And you?" "Ruby." "Why were you sad, Ruby?" Ruby was silent for a while. "Today is my birthday." "Really? How old did you turn?" 5. "Same as me." Junie smiled. "But then why are you sad? Birthdays are fun." "Not here." "What do you mean?" "No one remembered. Mrs. Davies even forgot. And the other kids. They don't care." Junie felt her heart ache. "That's very sad." "It is." Ruby looked out the window again. "I wonder if my mum remembered my birthday." "You don't remember her?" "No. I've been here since I was a baby. Mrs. Davies said my mum couldn't take care of me." "Why?" Ruby touched her wheelchair. "Because of this." The chair. Yeah, she didn't know how to handle it. Junie found that strange. But you're just a normal person who uses a wheelchair. Ruby looked at her, surprised. Normal? Of course. You talk, you think, you feel. You're just like me, but with wheels. Other people don't think so. What other people? Everyone. The kids here, the adults who come to visit, they look at me like I'm different. Different how? Like I'm broken. Junie shook her head. That's silly. You're not broken. How do you know? Because you're talking to me. And your eyes aren't really sad, they're just sad for today. Ruby blinked several times. What do you mean? I just know these things. And I know you wanted someone to talk to. That's true. And you don't like being alone, but you are because you don't know how to make friends. Ruby's jaw dropped. How do you know that? Because it's the same with me. I'm alone at home too, just me and my dad. But you have a dad. I do, but he works a lot. And there are no kids on our street for me to play with. So you're lonely too? I am. That's why I know how bad it feels. Ruby nodded. It's very bad. But now we've met. Do you want to be my friend? You want to be my friend? I do. If you want to, too. I really want to. Junie looked around the room. What do you like to do? Drawing. Watching the birds outside. Reading when there are new books. I like to draw too. Are you good at it? I think so. Can you show me? Ruby nodded and moved to a low table where there were some colored pencils and paper. Junie followed her, watching how Ruby moved in the chair. Did you learn to use the chair by yourself? I did. Nobody taught me. Wow. That must have been hard. It was at first, but I'm used to it now. Ruby picked up a piece of paper and started drawing a bird. Junie sat beside her, watching. That's beautiful, said Junie. You draw so much better than me. Really? Really? Look how detailed the feathers are. Ruby smiled. It was the first smile since Junie had arrived. Thank you. Can I draw too? Of course. Ruby gave Junie paper and pencils. They sat drawing side by side. Junie drew a house with a garden. Ruby, were you born in the wheelchair? Not in the chair. I was born with legs that don't work. The chair came later. And does it hurt? It doesn't hurt. I just don't feel anything in my legs. But you feel other things. What do you mean? Like, if I give you a hug, do you feel it? I do. So it's just your legs that don't work. The rest of you is normal. Yeah. Ruby stopped drawing. You're very different from other people. Why? Because you don't feel sorry for me. And you don't look at the chair like it's scary. Why would I? The chair is even pretty. It's blue, right? It is. I like blue. It matches your eyes. Ruby blushed. Thank you. And do you like my hair color? I do. It's just like mine. It is. We look a lot alike. I always wanted to have a friend, said Ruby. Me too. At home, it's just me and my dad. It's been a long time since I've talked this much. How long? Months. The other kids don't talk to me much. Why? Because I can't play the same games they do. What kind of games? Running, jumping, playing hide and seek? But there are lots of other things to play. Like what? Drawing, like we're doing now. Telling stories, playing with dolls. Would you do those things with me? Of course. By the way, do you have dolls here? There are some in that box, but they're kind of old. That's okay. They went to the toy box. Ruby picked out a doll with somewhat messy hair. This is the one I like the most. Why? Because she's blonde too, like us. She is. What's her name? She doesn't have a name. No one ever gave her one. Then let's give her one. How about Clara? Why Clara? Because she has light-colored eyes, just like us. I like it. Clara. Ruby hugged the doll. Do you want a doll too? Ruby picked another one from the box. Thanks. I'll call her Luna. Why? Because her hair is kind of silvery. Like the moon. Pretty. Clara and Luna can be friends, just like us. Ruby smiled. Friends. I like that. They played with the dolls, making up stories. Ruby seemed much more cheerful now. You know what I've always wanted, said Ruby. What? To have a doll that's just mine, that no one else plays with. Do you share everything here? We do. We don't have anything that's just ours. That must be strange. It is. Sometimes I wish I had a little corner that was all my own. Just then they heard footsteps on the stairs. Grayson and Mrs. Davies were coming down. When they reached the room, they found Junie and Ruby on the floor, playing with dolls and surrounded by colored papers. Junie, what have you been up to? Asked Grayson, smiling. I made a friend, Dad. This is Ruby. Grayson approached. Hi, Ruby. It's a pleasure to meet you. Ruby became shy, but replied softly, Hi. She draws really well, Dad, and today is her birthday. Birthday? Grayson knelt down. How old did you turn, Ruby? 5. The same age as Junie. Happy birthday, sweetie. Mrs. Davies looked surprised. Birthday, Ruby, why didn't you tell me? Ruby shrugged. I thought you wouldn't care. Of course I care. We'll make a little cake for you later. Really? Really? How cool, said Junie. Dad, can we stay for the cake? Grayson looked at his watch. Not today, sweetheart. But we can come back another day. Promise. I promise. Ruby, did you hear that? We're going to see each other again. Ruby nodded, her eyes shining. Ruby is one of our dearest children, said Mrs. Davies. Very creative and affectionate. I can see that, said Grayson, looking at the drawings. Well, I think it's time for us to go, said Grayson. Junie, shall we put things away? Can I take Ruby's drawing? If she lets you. You can take it, said Ruby. And can I keep yours? Of course. They exchanged drawings. Junie carefully folded Ruby's bird. Bye, Ruby. Bye, Junie. Don't forget me. How could I forget? You're my first real friend. Junie smiled and gave Ruby a hug. Grayson and Junie walked to the door. Ruby followed them in her wheelchair. Bye, Ruby waved, holding the dolls. Junie waved back from the car until she couldn't see Ruby anymore. During the drive, Grayson talked about his conversation with the director, but Junie was quiet, looking out the window with the drawing on her lap. Are you okay, sweetheart? I'm fine. Just thinking. About what? About Ruby. She was so sad when I got there. Why? Because it was her birthday and nobody remembered, and because she's alone all the time. That is very sad. It is. Dad. What is it? Can we buy a doll for Ruby? A doll? Yeah. She really liked playing with dolls today. And she said she always wanted to have a doll of her very own. Of course we can, sweetheart. That's a great idea. Really? Really? We can buy a very pretty doll for her. Thank you, Dad. She'll be so happy. Dad? What is it? I really liked Ruby. Can I see her again? Grayson looked in the rearview mirror and saw his daughter's light-colored eyes, full of hope. Of course you can, sweetheart. Promise. I promise, Junie smiled. She'll like knowing that. Dad. Thanks for taking me there. Why? Because now I have a friend, and Ruby does too. Grayson felt his eyes well up. His daughter had just learned the most important lesson in life. You're welcome, my love. You're welcome. A week later, Junie was in the back seat of the car, carefully holding a small package. The doll was wrapped in a small cloth her grandmother had given her. Her fingers squeezed the gift lovingly, anxious to see her friend's reaction. Are you sure she'll like it? She asked for the third time during the trip. I'm sure, sweetheart, Grayson answered, smiling through the rearview mirror. You chose it with so much care. It's just that she's never gotten a real present. Only things that everyone uses together. That's exactly why it will be even more special. Junie looked out the window and saw the green gate of the orphanage approaching. Her heart beat faster. Since the last visit, she had thought about Ruby every day. She wondered if she was okay, if she was still sad, if she remembered her. At the toy store, they had spent almost an hour choosing the perfect doll. Junie rejected several options until she found one that seemed just right for Ruby. It had curly blonde hair, blue eyes like hers, and a sweet smile painted on its porcelain face. This one, Dad, Junie had said, picking up the doll carefully. She looks like Ruby. Are you sure? I'm sure. Look at her eyes. They're just like Ruby's. Grayson had agreed, seeing how his daughter's eyes shone with happiness as she imagined her friend's reaction. The car stopped in the same spot as always. This time, Junie got out quickly, holding the package against her chest as if it were a treasure. "Slow down, Junie," said Grayson, taking a smaller box from the trunk. "Ruby's not going to run away." "I know, but I miss her so much. You've talked about her every day this week. It's because she's special, Dad. Different from other people." They walked to the entrance. Mrs. Davies greeted them with the same warm smile as always. "So good to see you again. Ruby has been asking when you would be back." "She asked?" Junie's eyes lit up like stars. "Yes, she did. Every day. Is Junie coming back today?" It was always the first thing she'd ask me in the morning. "Really? Really?" "She's in the living room, in her usual spot. But she's more cheerful today. She said she had a feeling you would come." Junie ran ahead, leaving Grayson and the director behind. Her feet pattered on the wooden floor of the hallway, echoing through the house. When she reached the main room, she immediately looked for the corner by the window. There was Ruby, in the same position as a week ago, sitting in her wheelchair looking outside. But this time, when she heard the familiar footsteps, she turned quickly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "Junie!" Ruby's face lit up like a rising sun. "Ruby!" Junie ran to her, almost tripping in her haste. "You really came back." "I knew you would." "Of course I came back, I promised, remember." Ruby smiled that shy way Junie already knew so well. "I thought about you every day." "I thought about you too." Junie sat in the chair next to Ruby. "Look, I brought something very special for you." Ruby looked at the package Junie was holding so carefully. "For me. For you. It's a present." Ruby touched the cloth with her fingertips as if afraid of breaking it. "But why? Because it's your belated birthday present, and because special friends deserve special gifts. But I don't have anything to give you." "You already did. You gave me your friendship." With trembling hands, Ruby took the package. The cloth was soft and smelled like home, like family, like care. She had never held something that was completely hers, chosen especially for her. "Can I really open it?" "You can. I'm dying to see your face when you see what it is." Ruby began to unwrap the cloth with extreme care, as if she wanted to preserve every second of that moment. Her hands trembled slightly with nervousness and excitement. When the doll began to appear, she held her breath. It was more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. It had curly blonde hair that shone in the window light, blue eyes that seemed to look directly into her soul, and a pink dress with white lace details. It was new, with no signs of use, no broken or missing parts. Absolutely perfect. "She's beautiful," Ruby whispered, holding the doll as if it were made of the most fragile material in the world. "Do you really like it?" "Like it?" Ruby looked up, her eyes shining with tears that threatened to appear. "She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my whole life. My dad helped me choose. We spent almost 2 hours at the store." 2 hours? Yeah, I wanted it to be perfect. Just like you. No one has ever given me anything like this," Ruby continued to whisper, gently running her fingers through the doll's silky hair. Junie leaned closer, her light eyes meeting Ruby's. "It's so you remember that now you have me too." Ruby looked at Junie, then at the doll, then back at Junie. "Is she all mine? For real?" "All yours. Completely yours. No one else can play with her if you don't want them to. But the rules here say that the rules don't apply to birthday presents. Mrs. Davies already talked to my dad about it. This doll is yours forever." Ruby hugged the doll to her chest and closed her eyes, as if she were making a wish. "Thank you, Junie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." "You're welcome. What are you going to name her?" Ruby thought for a long moment, looking intently at the doll's face, as if searching for the perfect name written somewhere. "Hope. Hope. What a beautiful name." "Why?" "Because it means hope. And she gives me hope." "Hope for what?" That maybe I'm not so different after all. If someone like you wants to be my friend and gives me beautiful gifts, Maybe I am normal. Junie felt her chest tighten with emotion. You were always normal, Ruby. You just needed someone to see it. And you saw it. I saw it from the very first day. They spent the whole afternoon playing with Hope. Ruby invented a special voice for the doll, soft and musical, and created elaborate stories about a brave girl who traveled the world in search of adventures and true friendships. Hope lived in a very tall castle, far, far away from here, Ruby was saying, making the doll walk gracefully across the table. But she didn't like being there alone. Why was she alone in the castle? Because the other dolls thought she was too different. She had a pink dress and blue eyes, and they only had plain clothes and dark eyes. And did that matter? To them, it mattered. But Hope knew that on the inside, she was just like everyone else. And then what happened? Then she decided to leave the castle and look for real friends. Friends who didn't care about the color of her dress or her eyes, but who liked her heart. And did she find those friends? Ruby looked at Junie and smiled, a smile that lit up her whole face. She did. A very special friend who also had blonde hair and understood what it was like to feel lonely sometimes. Just like us, exactly like us, and they stayed friends forever, forever and ever. While they played, other children from the orphanage passed through the room. Some stopped to look, curious about the new and obviously expensive doll Ruby was holding so carefully. "Ruby, what a beautiful doll," said an older, brown-haired girl. "Can I play with it for a little bit?" Ruby clutched Hope to herself, protecting her. "No, she's mine." "But we always share everything here. It's the rule." "Not this one. It was a special gift." The girl made a face and crossed her arms. "That's not fair. Why do only you get presents?" "Because it's her birthday," Junie said firmly, "and because she's my friend." The girl huffed and walked away. Ruby sighed in relief and hugged Hope tighter. "You don't like sharing your things?" Junie asked with curiosity. "I like sharing some things, but Hope is special. She's the first thing that's really, truly mine. I understand completely. I have things that are just mine and that I don't like to lend out." "Like what?" "My teddy bear that I've had since I was a baby, my diary where I write my secrets, my favorite blue blanket that my mom made for me." Junie listed them on her fingers. "They're things that make me feel safe and special. Hope makes me feel safe too and special. Then it's perfect. Everyone deserves to have something like that. I never thought I would. Now you do, and you'll have it forever." They continued playing until the sun began to set outside. Ruby didn't let go of Hope for a second, taking her everywhere in the room, introducing her to the other old dolls as if they were members of a royal family. At the end of the afternoon, when Grayson appeared to pick up Junie, he found the two girls sitting on the floor in a circle, with Hope in the center like a princess, surrounded by new drawings they had made especially for the doll. "How was your afternoon?" he asked, smiling at the scene. "Great," Junie replied enthusiastically. "Ruby loved the present, right, Ruby?" "I loved it more than anything in the world," Ruby replied, hugging Hope. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever had." "I'm very happy, Ruby." Junie chose it with a lot of love. "Mr. Morrison," said Mrs. Davies, appearing in the room with a touched smile. "Thank you for such a special gift." Ruby hasn't let go of the doll for a second. "I don't think I've ever seen a child so happy. It was a great pleasure. Every child deserves to have something special that is just theirs." "Hope is going to live with me in my room," said Ruby. "I've never had anything to sleep with." "That's wonderful," said Grayson. "I'm sure you two will be very happy together." "Dad, can I come back next week?" Junie asked, already anticipating the answer. "Of course you can, if Ruby wants you to, of course." "I really want you to," Ruby said quickly, "and I can show you more of Hope's stories. I'm already thinking of several new adventures." "That will be amazing." When it was time to say goodbye, Ruby held Junie's free hand. The other still held Hope firmly. "Thank you for everything, Junie. For being my friend, for the gift, for making me feel special. Thank you for being the best friend I've ever had." "Hope is going to sleep with me tonight," said Ruby, her eyes shining. "And every night, I'll never sleep alone again." "That's good. I don't think you'll ever feel lonely again." "I won't. I have you and I have Hope, and we'll always be here for you. During the ride back, Junie was quieter than usual, but it wasn't a sad quietness. It was a thoughtful, satisfied quietness. Grayson watched her through the rearview mirror, noticing how she seemed more mature, more complete somehow. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" "Yes, Dad. I'm just thinking about how happy Ruby was." She was radiant. "You could tell she'd never had anything like that, right? Something that was just hers." "It's very sad to think about. But now she has it. And she knows she has someone who cares about her. Thanks to you. And to you too, Dad. You're the one who taught me to help others." Grayson smiled, proud. "You learned very well, Dad?" "Yes." "Why do some kids not have families? Why doesn't anyone adopt Ruby?" Grayson thought carefully before answering, choosing words his 5-year-old daughter could understand. "Sometimes things don't happen the way they should, sweetheart. Some people can't take care of their children. Others get sick or have accidents. Like what happened to Mommy. Like what happened to Mommy. But Ruby, she's so special, so sweet. Why doesn't anyone want her?" Sometimes people are afraid of what they don't know. The wheelchair scares some people because they don't understand that it's just a tool, like glasses or braces. But it's just a chair with wheels. "I know. You know, but not everyone understands that like you do." Junie was silent for a few minutes, processing the information and looking out the window at the passing houses. "Dad? What is it?" "I've always wanted a sister." "I know, sweetheart. You've always asked. Ruby understands me in a way no one else does. We think alike and we like the same things. We have the same way of seeing the world. It's very beautiful to see you two together. And she understands me when I talk about Mommy. She doesn't have a mom to talk to either." "That's true. You have that in common. We take care of each other, you know? Like a real family." Grayson looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror with renewed attention. There was something in her voice, a maturity and a certainty he hadn't noticed before. "How do you take care of each other?" "I brought her the present so she wouldn't be sad on her forgotten birthday. She makes me laugh with her stories. I teach her things. She teaches me other things. We're not lonely anymore when we're together. You really are very special friends." "It's more than friendship, Dad." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "It's like we're family. Like you and I are family, but different too." Grayson felt something move deep in his chest. He watched his daughter in the mirror and saw her light eyes shining with genuine happiness and an understanding that surprised him. "You really like Ruby, don't you?" "I like her more than anyone in the world after you. She fills a hole that was in my heart." "What hole, dear?" "The sister hole. The have someone my age to share secrets with, to play with, to understand things that grown-ups don't understand." "I see. And Dad?" "Yes. I think I fill a hole in her heart too." "Why do you think that?" "Because she was so lonely, so sad. And now she smiles all the time when I'm with her. And she plays. And she has hope to take care of. And she has someone who believes she's special." Grayson drove in silence for a few miles, absorbing the profound words of his little daughter. Junie was right. He realized that now with absolute clarity. Ruby wasn't just occupying a new space in their lives. She was filling a void that had existed for a long time, since Junie was too little to have a sister. And maybe, just maybe, she was filling a void that existed in all of them. The void of an incomplete family, of unshared love, of an unfound purpose. "Dad, what is it, my love? Do you think we can visit Ruby more often? Like twice a week?" "Of course we can. As many times as you want and Mrs. Davies allows." "Thank you." Junie smiled. "I hope we'll take good care of Ruby when we're not there." "I'm sure she will. And Ruby will always take good care of Hope. Without a doubt. That's what families do, right, Dad? Always take care of each other." Grayson felt his eyes well up and had to blink several times to see the road clearly. "That's right, my love. That's exactly what families do." When they got home, Junie went straight to her room. She said she was tired but happy to have made Ruby smile. That night, after Junie fell asleep holding her own teddy bear, Grayson stayed up late, sitting on the porch, looking at the stars and thinking. His daughter had found something very special in Ruby, more than a friend, more than a companion for the afternoons. She had found a piece of herself she didn't know was missing, and in the process, she had taught him something about love, about family, about purpose. Maybe it was time to consider that some families weren't born ready-made. Maybe some needed to be built, brick by brick, gift by gift, tear by tear, smile by smile. And maybe, just maybe, they were at the beginning of building something beautiful together. 2 weeks after delivering Hope, Junie was more anxious than usual on the way to the orphanage. There was something very important she wanted to talk to Ruby about. All week, a question had been hammering in her head. "Dad, do you think Ruby will like my idea?" she asked, fiddling nervously with her hands. "What idea, sweetheart?" "The idea I'm going to tell her today." "I can't know if you don't tell me what it is." Junie hesitated. "It's a surprise. But it's something very important. More important than the other gifts? More important than anything I've ever said in my life." Grayson smiled in the rearview mirror. "I'm sure that, whatever it is, Ruby will be happy. You two always understand each other." When they arrived at the orphanage, Junie ran into the living room as she always did. Ruby was there, in her corner by the window, playing with Hope. The doll was wearing a little dress that Ruby had made from scraps of fabric. "Junie," Ruby held Hope closer to her chest. "Hope missed you. And I missed both of you." Junie sat down next to her friend. "How was your week?" "Very good. Hope slept with me every night, and I told her all the stories I could make up. I even made new clothes for her. That's so cool. She's getting more beautiful every day. And some of the kids here have started talking to me more because of Hope. They think she's very pretty." "That's great, Ruby." Ruby showed her the little bed she had made for Hope, a shoebox lined with soft fabric and decorated with drawings. "That's beautiful, Ruby. Did you do it by yourself?" "I did almost all of it myself. Mrs. Davies helped me cut the fabric, but I arranged everything." "You're very creative. Hope deserves the best, right?" "Just like you." They played with Hope for a little while, inventing new adventures, but Junie was pensive, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how to begin. "Ruby," Junie said finally, taking her friend's hand in hers, "can I ask you something very important?" "Of course, you can ask me anything." Junie took a deep breath and looked directly into Ruby's light eyes. "Do you want to be my little sister?" Ruby blinked several times. "Your little sister?" "Yeah, for real, not just pretend." But how?" "My dad can adopt you. Then you can come live with us and we'll be a real family." Ruby fell silent, processing the information. Then she lowered her eyes, looking at her own hands. "But I can't walk." "So what?" Junie replied with natural ease. "But you can play. You can laugh. You can do a ton of things." "But families want kids who can do everything normally." "You do everything normally. You just use wheels instead of feet." Ruby looked up, surprised by the simplicity of the answer. But what?" Ruby was silent for a moment, struggling with words that were too heavy. "Here at the orphanage, no one wanted to play with me," she finally murmured. "They said I got in the way." "Then they didn't know how to play right," Junie answered without hesitation. "What do you mean?" "Playing right is when everyone has fun together. If someone is left out, then it's not real playing." "Do you really think so?" "I don't think so, Ruby, I know so. Because playing with you is the most fun thing in the world." Ruby looked up completely. "Do you really think I can be your real sister?" "I don't think so. I know so." Junie squeezed Ruby's hand. "You're already my sister in my heart. Now we just need to make it real." "How does that work?" "My dad can explain it better, but it has to do with living in the same house, having the same family, always taking care of each other." "Living in the same house? In your house?" "Yeah. Having your own room, your own toys, sleeping and waking up every day in the same place as me." Ruby's jaw dropped. "Is that possible?" "Of course it is. My dad already talked to Mrs. Davies about it." "He did? About me?" "He did. It's called adoption." Ruby held Hope tighter. "And he really wants to adopt me. He really wants to. And I want you to be my sister even more. We would be a complete family. But I'll be a lot of trouble." "Because of the chair." "Ruby," Junie interrupted firmly, "you are not trouble. You are a gift. How do you know? Because ever since I met you, I've been happier, and my dad is happy too when he sees us together. Ruby started to cry softly, but it wasn't sadness. It was relief and happiness mixed together. I've always dreamed of this, she whispered, but I never thought it would actually happen. Well, it will if you want it to. I want it so much. Then it's settled. Junie smiled and hugged Ruby. Now let's play like real sisters. They spent the rest of the afternoon drawing together, but there was something different in the air. They were no longer just two friends. They were two sisters discovering what it would be like to live together. Junie, can I tell you a secret? Ruby said as she drew a house with two little girls in front. Of course, sisters can tell each other secrets. I always pretended you were my sister when you weren't here. I would talk to Hope about you, about what it would be like if we lived in the same house. Really, what a coincidence. Why? Because I did that at home too. I would save a place for you at the dinner table and tell my dad it was my sister Ruby's spot. For real. For real. And I'd tell stories to my teddy bear about my sister Ruby, who I was going to get soon. Ruby laughed out loud, and it was a sound unlike anything Junie had ever heard. It was a free laugh, without weight, without hidden sadness. And now it's going to be for real. It's going to be for real forever. When Grayson appeared in the room later, he found the two girls on the floor, surrounded by colorful drawings, laughing at some story Ruby was telling. How was the afternoon? He asked. Great, Dad. I talked to Ruby about, about that. And what did she think? Ruby looked at Grayson with her eyes still red from crying with happiness. Mr. Morrison, is it true that you want to adopt me? Grayson knelt to her level. It's true, Ruby. If you want to be part of our family, I want to very much. Then let's make it happen. At that moment, Mrs. Davies appeared in the room. Grayson stood up and went to speak with her in a corner, while the girls continued to play. Mrs. Davies, I'd like to talk about adopting Ruby. The director blinked several times. Adoption, Ruby's. Yes, my daughter and she have formed a very special bond, and we would like her to be part of our family. Mrs. Davies looked at Ruby, who was teaching Junie how to braid Hope's hair, and her eyes filled with tears. Mr. Morrison, no one has ever asked for her. In 5 years, no one has ever shown any interest. Why? The wheelchair scares a lot of people. They think it will be too difficult, too expensive. And is it? No more than any child. Ruby is special, Mr. Morrison. She has so much love to give, so much creativity. The director wiped her eyes. It would be an honor to start the adoption process. How long does it take? A few months. There's paperwork, visits, evaluations. But I can expedite whatever is possible. And in the meantime, you can continue to visit, and we can start preparing Ruby for the move. Grayson looked at the two girls, who were now drawing a family of 4, a man, 2 blonde girls, and a doll. She's already prepared, he said softly. In fact, I think we were all prepared a long time ago. The following weeks passed like a dream. Grayson officially started the adoption process, filling out paperwork, receiving visits from social workers, preparing the house to welcome Ruby. Meanwhile, the visits to the orphanage became more frequent. Junie went 2 or 3 times a week, always eager to share news with her future sister and plan what their life together would be like. Ruby, you're going to have your own room, Junie told her during one of these visits, with a big bed, a closet, a desk for drawing. All my own, all your own. And it will be next to my room so we can talk through the wall before we go to sleep. And can Hope stay there? Of course. There will even be a special shelf for her and the other dolls you're going to get. Other dolls? Of course. Any sister of mine will have as many dolls as she wants. Ruby smiled so much her cheeks hurt. For the first time in her life, she had plans. She had a future. She had a family waiting for her. 3 months later, the day finally came. Ruby was ready to go home. Grayson and Junie arrived at the orphanage on a sunny spring morning. Ruby was waiting in the living room, wearing a new outfit that Mrs. Davies had provided, holding Hope in a small suitcase with her few belongings. Ready? Asked Junie. More than ready, Ruby replied, smiling. The farewell from the orphanage was quick. Ruby hugged Mrs. Davies, thanked her for all the care, but she was anxious to start her new life. During the drive home, Ruby was glued to the window, observing everything with curious eyes. "Is it far from here?" she asked. "Not too far. About 20 minutes, Grayson replied. "And what's the house like?" "You'll see soon," said Junie, barely able to contain her excitement. When they arrived, Ruby stared at the two-story house with a garden in front. It was beautiful, welcoming, with flowers in the windows and a swing on the porch. "Is this it?" "This is it," said Grayson. "Welcome to your new home, Ruby." Grayson had made some adjustments to the house. Ramps at the entrances, handrails in strategic places, and most importantly, a room specially prepared for Ruby on the ground floor. "Do you want to see your room?" asked Junie. Ruby nodded, nervous and excited at the same time. They opened the door to a room that was perfect. It had a low bed, easy for Ruby to transfer from her chair, a closet with hangers at the right height, an adapted drawing table, shelves for books and toys, and on the wall, a framed picture of the first drawing Ruby had made for Junie, the bird. "Is all this for me?" Ruby whispered, looking around with wide eyes. "It's your home now," Grayson said gently. Ruby entered the room slowly, touching each thing as if she needed to make sure it was real. The soft bed, the colorful curtains, the shelf where hope could live. "It's the most beautiful room I've ever seen," she finally said. "And it's just the beginning," said Junie. "Now we're going to be sisters forever." Ruby turned and hugged Junie with all her strength. "Thank you for choosing me as your sister. Thank you for accepting to be chosen." Grayson watched the two blonde girls hugging in the middle of the room and knew he had made the best decision of his life. His family was finally complete. Outside the window, birds sang in the garden trees. It was as if the whole world was celebrating the fact that Ruby had finally found her place in the world. Her home, her family, her sister, forever. A month after Ruby's arrival, the Morrison house had been completely transformed. What was once a quiet home, where only the steps of Grayson and Junie echoed through the halls, was now full of life, laughter, and lively conversations that lasted from breakfast until bedtime. "Junie, can you comb Hope's hair while I fix Clara's?" Ruby asked on a sunny Saturday morning. They were in Ruby's room on the floor, surrounded by dolls, small brushes, colorful ribbons, and all sorts of accessories Grayson had bought for them. The table was turned upside down, serving as an improvised beauty salon. "Of course, but I think Hope is being a bit rebellious today," said Junie, picking up Ruby's favorite doll. "Look how messy her hair is. It's because she had a busy night. She dreamed she was flying with the birds in the garden." "How do you know?" "She told me when she woke up," Ruby replied with all seriousness, making Junie laugh. "Do your dolls talk to you?" "Yes, they do, don't yours?" "They do too. My bear Theodore always tells me his dreams." They spent the entire morning creating elaborate hairstyles on the dolls. Ruby made perfect braids, while Junie was an expert in buns and ponytails decorated with ribbons. Each doll got a unique look, and they made up stories about where each one was going with that special hairstyle. "Clara is going to a royal ball," explained Ruby, putting a golden ribbon in the doll's hair. "She's going to dance with a prince. And Hope is going to a garden party," said Junie, making small braids with fabric flowers. "Where there are butterflies and little birds. Can they go together?" "Of course. Sisters always do everything together." From upstairs, Grayson listened to the girls' voices blending into a cheerful melody that filled every corner of the house. He was working from home that Saturday, but he constantly found himself stopping just to listen to the laughter coming from Ruby's room. For years, that house hadn't heard the pure sound of childhood. Since Junie was too little to really talk and play, the house had lived in a respectful silence, broken only by polite conversations between father and daughter or the sounds of the television. Now there was constant music, lively conversations about dreams, plans, and discoveries, arguments about which color pencil to use in a drawing, laughter that erupted from nowhere and spread through the house like rays of sunshine. "Dad!" Junie shouted from downstairs. "Come see what we did!" Grayson came down the stairs and found the two girls in the living room with all the dolls lined up in a row, each with a different hairstyle and matching outfits. "What a beautiful parade," he said, crouching down to admire their work. You are professional hairstylists. Ruby taught me how to do a 4-strand braid, said Junie proudly. And Junie taught me how to make a double bow, Ruby added. You teach each other a lot of things, don't you? We learn something new from each other every day, said Ruby. Yesterday Junie taught me how to make a paper airplane, and I taught her how to draw clouds that look real. And today we're going to trade stories, said Junie. We're each going to tell a made-up story to the other. Can I listen too? Asked Grayson. Of course, they both said at the same time, then laughed for having spoken together. They settled on the living room sofa. Ruby sat in the middle, between Grayson and Junie, with Hope on her lap. That's how they liked to sit, always close together, always touching in some way. I'll start, said Junie. Once upon a time, there was a magical doll who lived in an enchanted forest. Junie told an elaborate story about a doll who helped lost animals find their families. Ruby listened with full attention, asking questions and making suggestions for the plot. Now it's my turn, said Ruby when Junie finished. Once upon a time, there was a golden bird who didn't know how to fly. Ruby's story was about a bird who discovered that he didn't need to fly to be special because he could sing the most beautiful songs in the world. Grayson noticed how his daughters expressed themselves through their stories, revealing their fears, dreams, and way of seeing the world. What beautiful stories, he said when Ruby finished. You have incredible imaginations. We make up stories every day, said Junie, especially at bedtime. At bedtime? Yeah, explained Ruby. Sometimes I sleep in Junie's room, sometimes she sleeps in mine. And before we go to sleep, we tell stories softly. You sleep in each other's rooms. Sometimes, said Junie, when we want to talk later, or when Ruby has a nightmare. I still have nightmares sometimes, Ruby admitted quietly. I dream that I'm back at the orphanage and that you guys aren't real. But then Junie wakes me up and reminds me that I'm home, Ruby continued, smiling at her sister. And when I have nightmares about scary things, Ruby tells me stories until I calm down, said Junie. Grayson felt his chest warm. His daughters had created their own system of mutual care, a support network that worked naturally, without any adult needing to teach them. You take good care of each other, he observed. That's what sisters do, said Ruby simply. How do you know that? Grayson asked, curious. I don't know, I just feel that it's right. When Junie is sad, I get sad too. When she's happy, I get even happier. And when Ruby is worried, I get worried too, said Junie. It's like we're connected on the inside. After lunch, the girls went out to play in the garden. Grayson had installed a low picnic table, perfect for Ruby to reach from her wheelchair, and scattered cushions on the grass for Junie to sit on. Let's play family, suggested Junie. What do you mean? You be the mum, I'll be the oldest daughter, and the dolls are the babies. But I don't know how to be a mum, said Ruby, hesitant. Nobody knows at first. We'll learn together. They played family for hours. Ruby discovered that she liked to take care of the baby dolls, inventing voices for them and creating care routines. Junie had fun being the responsible daughter who helped her mother with everything. Ruby, you would be a very good real mum, said Junie in the middle of the game. Why? Because you're caring and patient, and you tell the best stories. You would be a very good older sister too. I already am. I am your older sister. That's right, Ruby laughed. Sometimes I forget because we look so much alike. How many minutes older do you think I am? About 5 minutes? Perfect. So I'm responsible for taking care of you for 5 minutes, and you take care of me for the other 5. At the end of the afternoon, Ruby decided she wanted to explore more of the garden. She had limited herself to the area near the table, but now she wanted to see the flowers that grew at the back of the yard. I'm going to see the roses Dad planted, she said, starting to push her chair across the grass. Want me to push? Offered Junie. No, thank you. I can do it. Ruby was determined to be as independent as possible. Grayson had taught her that asking for help when she needed it was important, but that doing things on her own when she could was equally valuable. The grass was a bit uneven near the roses. Ruby had to push harder, and one of the wheels found a small hole she hadn't seen. The chair tilted sharply to the side, and Ruby lost her balance, falling from the chair and landing on the soft grass. "Ruby!" shouted Junie, running to her. Grayson, who was watering plants on the other side of the garden, dropped the hose and ran over too. "Are you hurt?" he asked, kneeling beside Ruby. Ruby was sitting on the grass, checking if she was injured. She wasn't hurt, but her face was red with shame and frustration. "I'm sorry," she muttered, not looking up. "I told you I was trouble." "Ruby," Grayson said firmly, helping her sit up better, "you will never be trouble. You are a gift." "But I fell, and now you have to help me. And nothing," Grayson interrupted, his voice full of affection. "Falling is a part of life. Everyone falls sometimes. I fall. Junie falls. You fall. The difference is that we get up and keep trying." "But it's harder for me," Ruby whispered. "Some things are harder for you, others are easier. You draw better than Junie and I put together. You tell stories that make us dream. You see beauty in things we don't even notice." Ruby finally looked up and looked at Grayson. "Really?" "Really. And you know what else? I feel lucky every day that you're a part of our family. Even when I fall and need help, especially when you need help, because it means you trust us, and because taking care of the ones we love is one of the best parts of having a family." Ruby didn't answer with words. Instead, she threw herself into Grayson's arms and hugged him with all her might, burying her face in his shoulder. Grayson hugged her back, feeling how small and fragile she still was, but also how strong and brave. He felt Junie join the hug, wrapping her thin little arms around both of them. "I love you guys," Ruby whispered in the hug. "And we love you," Grayson replied. "More than you can imagine." When they separated, Grayson helped Ruby back into her chair, checked if she was comfortable, and then the three of them went to see the roses together. "They're beautiful," said Ruby, gently touching a red petal. "Do you want me to cut one for you to take to your room?" offered Grayson. "Can I? Won't they be sad?" "Not if we cut it carefully. And that way you can have their beauty close to you." Grayson cut a small, perfect rose, which Ruby held as if it were made of gold. "I'll put it in the glass of water on my nightstand," she said. "That way, I'll wake up every morning seeing something beautiful." "Just like I wake up seeing you two," said Grayson, making the girls laugh. That night, after the girls had dinner and took their baths, they settled in the living room for story time before bed. It was a tradition they had created. Each night, a different person told a story to the other two. "It's my turn to tell a story tonight," said Grayson, sitting between them on the sofa. "What story are you going to tell?" asked Junie. "A story about a house that became happy." "Can a house be happy?" asked Ruby. "This one can. Once upon a time, there was a big, beautiful house, but it was very quiet and a little sad." "Why was it sad?" asked Junie. "Because houses are made to have families, and this house felt that something was missing." Grayson told the story of a house that waited a long time until it found the perfect family to fill it with love, laughter, and life. "And when the family was complete," he continued, "the house was so happy that it began to glow from the inside. The walls grew warmer, the hallways echoed with sounds of joy, and even the plants in the garden grew more beautiful." "Like our house?" asked Ruby. "Exactly like our house," Grayson confirmed. When it was time for bed, the girls decided that Ruby would sleep in Junie's room that night. "So we can talk about the garden flowers," explained Ruby. "And about the stories we're going to make up tomorrow," Junie added. Grayson helped them get settled in Junie's bed, Ruby with Hope in her lap, Junie with Theodore hugged tight, the two of them sharing Junie's favorite blanket. "Good night, girls," he said, kissing each of them on the forehead. "Good night, Daddy," they said together. Grayson left the room, leaving the door ajar as they liked. In the hallway, he stopped for a moment to listen to the soft voices of his daughters talking in the dark. "Junie, what? Thank you for teaching me that falling isn't the end of the world. Thank you for teaching me that taking care of someone is a good thing. Sisters always take care of each other, right? Always, forever and ever." Grayson smiled and headed to his own room, his heart full of a happiness he didn't know was possible to feel. His house was complete. His family was whole, and the sound of childhood had returned to stay, bringing with it the silent healing they all needed. From the girls' room, Whispers and soft laughter still came, and Grayson fell asleep to that sound, knowing it was the soundtrack of true happiness. 3 months after Ruby's arrival, the Morrison family's routine had settled into a harmonious dance of small, happy moments. The mornings began with the girls' laughter at breakfast, continued with games in the garden, and ended with stories told on the living room sofa. That Friday night, Grayson had prepared the girls' favorite dinner, pasta with tomato sauce and melted cheese on top. Ruby and Junie were excitedly talking about the day they had spent drawing a complete storybook. "And then the princess finds the dragon," Ruby explained, gesturing with her fork. "But he's not mean. He was just lonely and sad. Just like you were when I met you," Junie said without thinking, then stopped, realizing what she had said. "Sorry, Ruby. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Ruby smiled. "It's true. I was lonely and sad. But I'm not anymore." Grayson watched his daughter's conversation with that calm smile that had become constant in recent months. Seeing how they understood each other, how they cared for each other, how they created their own world full of imagination and affection, was better than any movie or book. "Dad," Junie said suddenly, "did you grow up in a big family too?" The question caught Grayson by surprise. He chewed slowly, thinking about how to answer. There were things from his past that were still difficult to talk about, even after so many years. "Why do you want to know, sweetheart?" "Because you know exactly how to take care of 2 girls at the same time, and how to make us feel at home. It seems like you've done this before." Ruby also stopped eating, paying attention to the conversation. Her light eyes were fixed on Grayson, curious but respectful. Grayson put his fork down on the plate and looked at the 2 girls. Ruby seemed especially interested, as if the answer was important to her in a way he didn't fully understand. "Actually," he began slowly, "I didn't grow up in a big family." "What do you mean?" asked Junie. Grayson took a deep breath. He had never told Junie this story. He always thought she was too young to understand. But looking at Ruby, he realized that maybe it was the right time. "I grew up in that orphanage too." The silence that followed was complete. Junie paused with her fork in the air, her mouth open. Ruby blinked several times, as if she hadn't understood correctly. "In the same orphanage as Ruby?" Junie finally asked. "The very same. I lived there from the age of 3 to 8. But how? Why?" Junie was clearly confused. "My biological parents died in a car accident when I was little. There was no one else to take care of me, so I went to the orphanage." Ruby said nothing, but Grayson saw how her eyes filled with a deep understanding. She knew exactly what it was like to grow up in that place, what it was like to sleep in a bed that wasn't yours, to play with toys that belonged to no one. "And you were there for a long time?" Junie asked, still processing the information. 5 years. They were 5 difficult years." "Difficult how?" Grayson looked at Ruby before answering. She was listening to every word with full attention, and he realized she understood things that Junie, fortunately, would never have to understand. "It was lonely," he said simply. "Just like you both already know it can be." Ruby nodded almost imperceptibly. She knew. "But then what happened?" asked Junie. "Then a family chose me, a couple who couldn't have biological children, but who had a lot of love to give. They adopted me and gave me a new chance at a real family." "Just like you did with Ruby?" asked Junie, beginning to understand. "Exactly like that." Grayson looked directly at Ruby. "A family gave me a new chance. Today, I can do the same for you." Ruby let her fork fall onto her plate. Her eyes were shining, but not with sadness. It was something different, more profound. You know what it's like," she whispered. "I know exactly what it's like. I know what it's like to sleep in a bed that isn't yours. I know what it's like to play with toys that everyone uses. I know what it's like to wait for someone to come get you and wonder if it will ever happen." Ruby swallowed hard. "And I know what it's like when people look at you as if you're different." "Because of the chair?" "Because of anything that makes you seem different from others." Grayson nodded. "I know what that's like too. I was the boy whose parents died, the boy who had no one. Some people looked at me with pity, others as if I were a problem. But you weren't a problem," Junie said firmly. "No, and Ruby isn't either. Being different isn't being a problem. It's just being unique. And the family that adopted you, Ruby asked softly, did they really love you? They loved me as if I were their son from birth. They gave me a name. They gave me a home. They gave me an education. But more important than all of that, they gave me the feeling of belonging somewhere. Ruby blinked several times, absorbing every word. Is that what you're doing for me? She asked. Giving me the feeling of belonging. We're not giving it to you, Ruby. You already belong. Ever since the first day, Junie came home talking about the special girl she had met. Even with the chair, even with all the things I can't do. Especially because of who you are. The chair is just a part of you. Just like my glasses are a part of me. Or Junie's blonde hair is a part of her. Ruby was silent for a long moment, poking at her food without eating. Dad, said Junie, does the family that adopted you still exist? My adoptive mother passed away when I was 20. My adoptive father passed away shortly before you were born, but they taught me how to be a father. They taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. About deciding to love someone every single day. Is that why you knew Ruby had to be part of our family? Asked Junie. That's why, because I recognized in her the same thing my adoptive parents recognized in me. A child who needed love, and who had a lot of love to give in return. Ruby finally looked up and looked directly at Grayson. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For what? For choosing me. For understanding. For knowing what it's like. Thank you for letting us choose you. Ruby didn't answer with words. Instead, she got up from her chair, went around the table and approached Grayson. He picked her up and she snuggled against his chest as a smaller child would. I'll never have to go back there, will I? She whispered. Never. This is your home forever. And you are my family forever. Forever and ever. Junie also got up and joined the hug, wrapping her thin arms around her father and sister. We're a lucky family, she said, because everyone chose each other. What do you mean? Asked Ruby. Dad was chosen by his family. I was chosen by Dad when I was born. You were chosen by us, and we chose you all back. Ruby smiled, and Grayson felt how she completely relaxed in his arms. For the first time since she had arrived at the house, she seemed truly at peace. Can I tell you a secret? Ruby whispered in Grayson's ear. So of course. Ever since I got here, I've been afraid of waking up and finding out it was all a dream. And now I know it's real, because you understand, you really understand what it's like. Grayson hugged her tighter, feeling how this small, brave child had finally found her place in the world. Not just any place, but the right place. The place where she was loved not in spite of her differences, but including all of them. Ruby, he said softly. Yes. Welcome to the family. Forever. Ruby didn't answer, but Grayson felt her tears wet his shirt. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of a happiness so deep it couldn't be contained in words. That night, sitting at the dinner table with his two daughters, Grayson knew the circle was complete. He had received love when he needed it, and now he was passing that love on. This was how the world got better. One family at a time, one child at a time, one act of love at a time. And Ruby, finally, felt part of something that was bigger than her, but that had been made especially for her. A week after the conversation at dinner, Junie appeared in Ruby's room with a stack of notebooks, pencils, and erasers in her hands. It was a rainy Sunday morning, perfect for indoor activities. What's all this? Ruby asked, looking curiously at the school supplies. Supplies for you to learn how to write properly, Junie announced, dumping everything on Ruby's adapted table. My dad bought them for you yesterday. For me? For you? New notebooks, new pencils, everything new and just for you. Ruby picked up one of the notebooks and ran her fingers over the smooth, colorful cover. They were beautiful notebooks, with covers that showed flowers, butterflies, and rainbows. Completely different from the old, used notebooks that sometimes appeared at the orphanage. But I already know how to write a little. I know you do, but I want to teach you to write like they teach in school, with nice handwriting. No mistakes. The right way. Why? Junie sat in the chair next to Ruby's table. Because you're very important to me, and important people deserve to know all the cool things. Ruby smiled and opened the first notebook. The pages were white and clean, full of possibilities. Where do we start? With your name, I'm going to teach you how to write Ruby in the most beautiful way possible. Junie took a pencil and slowly wrote Ruby in large, neat capital letters on the first line of the notebook. See? Now you try underneath. Ruby held the pencil carefully and tried to copy the letters. Her hands trembled a little with nervousness, and the letters came out a bit crooked. "It's ugly," she murmured, frowning. "It's not ugly, it's a start. No one writes beautifully on the first day. It took me weeks to be able to write my name right." "Really? Really?" "Look." Junie took another notebook and showed Ruby some pages of exercises she had done when she was learning. The first few lines were full of uneven letters and crooked words. "Wow, you wrote worse than me," Ruby said, laughing. "Much worse. But look here at the end." Junie turned to the last pages, where her handwriting was much neater and more organized. "See? With practice, it gets pretty, and you'll get it too." They spent the entire morning practicing letters. First Ruby's name, then Junie's name, then simple words like house, doll, and family. "Now I'm going to teach you a very important word," said Junie, taking a new notebook. "What word?" "Daddy." Junie wrote the word with special care, even adding little details to the letters. "Why is this word important?" "Because now you have a real daddy, and every daughter has to know how to write daddy." Ruby looked at the word for a long moment, as if she were seeing something magical. "Can I try?" "Of course." Ruby copied the word slowly, concentrating on each letter. When she finished, they both looked at the result. "It looks beautiful," said Junie. "It really does." Ruby smiled. "Now I know how to write daddy. And I'll teach you how to write sister too." They continued to practice. Ruby was a dedicated student, trying each word several times until she could make the letters the way she wanted. Junie was a patient teacher, explaining how to hold the pencil, how to make the curves of the letters, how to leave the right amount of space between words. "Junie," Ruby said after a while, "can I tell you something?" "Of course." "You can tell me anything." "I've always wanted to go to school." Ruby's voice became quiet, as if she were revealing a very important secret. "Why?" "Because at school, kids learn new things every day, and I wanted to learn too. I wanted to know how to read difficult books, do big math problems, write real stories." "You didn't go to school at the place where you used to live?" Ruby shook her head. "Mrs. Davies always said it was complicated, because of the chair, the stairs, a lot of things. But that's not fair." "I know, but that's how it was." Ruby looked at the notebook. "That's why I never learned to write nicely. I only learned the basics." "And were you sad that you couldn't go?" "I was very sad. Especially when I heard other kids talking about school, about the teachers, about their friends from class." Junie was silent for a moment, imagining what it would be like not to be able to go to school, not to be able to learn new things with other friends. "But now you can go," she said finally. "I can." "Of course you can. You live here now." "And here, kids go to school. Even with the chair. My school has a ramp and an elevator, and the teachers are really nice." Ruby stopped writing and looked at Junie with shining eyes. "Do you think they would let me study there?" "I'm sure they would. Especially now that you're learning to write so nicely. And we would go to the same school. The same school at the same time, maybe even in the same class." Ruby dropped her pencil and hugged Junie tightly. "It would be the dream of my life," she whispered. "Then let's make it happen." At that moment, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Grayson appeared at the bedroom door, smiling when he saw the two girls surrounded by notebooks and papers. "How are the lessons going?" he asked. "Great," said Junie. "Ruby already knows how to write a bunch of words." "That's great. Can I see?" Ruby shyly showed the notebook to Grayson. He looked at each word carefully, giving genuine praise. "What nice handwriting, Ruby. You're learning very quickly. Junie is a good teacher." "She is indeed." Grayson sat on the edge of the bed. "And what are you learning all this for?" "So Ruby can go to school," Junie said quickly. Grayson looked at Ruby, who had her eyes fixed on the notebook, as if she were afraid to hear the answer. "Ruby," he said gently. "Look at me." Ruby slowly looked up. "I've always wanted to go to school," she said quietly, as if apologizing for wanting something. Grayson smiled. "You're going to go to the same school as Junie." Ruby blinked several times, as if she hadn't quite understood. "I am." "You are. I already spoke with the principal last week. They're getting everything ready for you to start next semester." "For real?" Ruby's voice came out as an astonished whisper. "For real? You'll have teachers, classmates, your own books, everything a girl like you deserves to have." Ruby couldn't speak. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of a joy so great it couldn't fit inside her. "And I'll be there with you," said Junie, taking her sister's hand. "I'll show you where everything is, introduce you to my friends, have lunch with you." Do you think I'll be able to keep up?" Ruby asked, still hardly believing what she was hearing. "I'm sure you will," said Grayson. "You're very dedicated, very hard-working, and now that you're learning to write better, you'll be prepared for anything. And what if the other boys and girls don't like me?" "They will like you," Junie said with conviction. "You're the coolest person I know, and if anyone doesn't like you, I'll take care of you." "Like sisters do," Ruby added, smiling. "Like sisters do." Ruby looked at the notebook full of words she had learned that morning, her own name, written by her own hands, the word Daddy, which was now a part of her life, the word family, which finally had a real meaning. For the first time in her life, Ruby could see the future, not as something distant and impossible, but as something real that was waiting for her. She could imagine herself in a classroom, raising her hand to answer questions, making friends, learning new things every day. "Can I keep practicing?" she asked. "You can practice as much as you want," said Grayson. "In fact, the more you practice, the more prepared you'll be. Then I'll practice every day, and I'll help you whenever you want," said Junie. Ruby picked up the pencil again and looked at the blank page in front of her. There were so many words to learn, so many stories to write, so much future to live. She began to write a new word, a word that Junie hadn't taught her yet, but that she knew was important. Tomorrow. Because now, for the first time, Ruby believed that tomorrow really existed, and that it would be good. "Thank you," she whispered, without looking up from the notebook. "For what?" Junie and Grayson asked at the same time. "For giving me a future." And she kept writing, one letter at a time, building her tomorrow word by word. 6 months after Ruby had arrived at the Morrison home, Grayson received a call that would change everything permanently. It was the social worker assigned to the case. All the documents were ready. It was time to make official what their hearts already knew. "Do the girls need to come along?" Grayson asked on the phone. "Ruby needs to be present to sign some age-appropriate documents," the social worker explained, "but it will be something simple, in a small room, nothing formal. And after that? After that, you can go home, as a complete and official family." Grayson felt a deep emotion rise in his chest. The moment had finally arrived. That Thursday morning, the three of them had a quieter breakfast than usual. It wasn't sadness, but anticipation. "Is today the day?" Ruby asked softly. "Today is the day," Grayson confirmed. "And after this, I'll officially be your daughter." "You are already my daughter, Ruby. Today we're just making the papers agree with what our hearts already know." Ruby smiled and held Junie's hand. "And will we be sisters on paper too?" "We'll be sisters in everything," said Junie, "forever." The drive was different this time. Ruby didn't look out the window with curiosity. Instead, she held hope against her chest and looked pensive. "Are you nervous?" asked Junie. "A little. It's strange going back there." "Why?" "Because the last time I left, I was one person. Today, I go back as a completely different person." "What do you mean?" "Last time, I was just the Ruby nobody wanted. Today, I'm the Ruby who has a family, who has a sister who is going to school. You were always special, Ruby," Grayson said from the rearview mirror. "The difference is that now you know it." When they arrived at the orphanage, everything seemed smaller than Ruby remembered. The green gate, the garden, the building that had once been her entire world. Now it just seemed like a place she had passed through. Mrs. Davies greeted them with an emotional smile. "How good to see you, Ruby. You look so beautiful and happy." Ruby really was different. Her blonde hair shone, her light eyes had a light that didn't exist before. She moved with confidence, like someone who knew where she belonged. "Thank you, Mrs. Davies. How are the other children?" "They're fine. Some asked about you in the first few weeks. And what did you tell them?" "I said you found your family and were very happy." Ruby nodded, satisfied. "Shall we take care of the paperwork?" said the social worker. They were taken to a small room Ruby had never seen before. It was cozy, with a wooden table, a few chairs, and a window that looked out onto the yard where she used to play alone. "Ruby," the social worker said gently, "do you understand what is happening today?" "I do. Mr. Morrison is going to sign papers to be my official dad, and I'm going to sign to be his official daughter." "Exactly. And are you sure this is what you want?" Ruby looked at Grayson, then at Junie, then back at the social worker. "I am absolutely sure. They are my family." The papers were presented one by one. Grayson signed his name on several lines, each signature making official something that had been real for months. Ruby, with her careful handwriting, signed her name in the indicated places. "There," said the lawyer with a smile. "Ruby Morrison, welcome officially to the family." "Ruby Morrison," Ruby repeated softly, testing how it sounded. "I like it." "And now?" asked Junie. "Now you can go home and be an official family." It was all simpler than anyone had imagined. There was no ceremony, no speeches, no party, just a few signatures in a small room, and everything was complete. As they left the room, Ruby asked to take one last walk around the orphanage. She wanted to see her old room, the living room where she had spent so many hours alone. "It's strange being here again," she said, standing at the door of the room that used to be hers. "How do you feel?" asked Grayson. "Grateful, very grateful. Grateful. This place took care of me when I had no one. It wasn't perfect, but it kept me safe until you found me." As they were leaving, Ruby stopped at the front door. She held hope to her chest and turned to look at the building one last time. "Thank you for taking care of me until now," she said softly, her eyes welling up. It was a simple but profound thank you, a recognition that this place had been important in her story, even if it was no longer where she belonged. "Ready?" Grayson asked gently. "Ready?" They walked out the front door together. No theatrical farewell, no drama, just with hearts full of gratitude for the past and hope for the future. In the car, Ruby was more talkative than on the way there. "Dad," she said, officially testing the word. "Can I call you Dad on paper now too?" "You can always call me Dad, Ruby. Anywhere. And can I call Junie my sister at school?" "Of course you can, because that's what you are." "The Morrison sisters," said Junie, smiling. "Forever," Ruby confirmed. When they got home, the girls were full of energy. All the nervousness of the day transformed into a desire to play and celebrate. "Let's draw on the patio in the garden," Junie suggested. "With colored chalk?" asked Ruby. "With all the chalk we have." They took the box of chalk and spread out on the concrete patio in the garden. Ruby positioned herself in her chair on a smooth part, while Junie sat beside her. "What should we draw?" asked Ruby. "The school of our dreams." "What do you mean?" "The perfect school where we both will study. The way we imagine it." Ruby took a piece of blue chalk and started to draw a large, beautiful building. Junie took green chalk and drew trees around it. Soon they were completely absorbed, adding details and colors. "This is the classroom door," Ruby explained excitedly when Grayson joined them, sitting on the ground. "And this is where the teacher stands," Junie added, pointing to an area decorated with colorful flowers. "And this square is the library," said Ruby, "with thousands of books." "And this part is the playground where we'll play during recess," said Junie. "You've thought of everything," said Grayson, admiring the elaborate drawing. "It's because we dream about this every day," Ruby explained. "And now the dream is going to become a reality," said Junie. When they finished, it was already lunchtime, but the day was so beautiful that Grayson suggested something different. How about we have a picnic in the garden to celebrate? A real picnic? Asked Ruby, excited. A real one, with a blanket on the ground, yummy food and everything. They prepared sandwiches, cut up fruit, filled bottles with juice, and got some homemade cookies. Grayson spread a large checkered blanket on the lawn, under the shade of Ruby's favorite tree. "This is the most beautiful picnic I've ever seen," said Ruby, transferring herself from her chair to the blanket. "It's the first official Morrison family picnic," said Junie solemnly. "Then it has to be special," Grayson agreed. They ate, laughed, told stories, and made plans for the future. Ruby talked about how excited she was to start school. Junie explained everything they would do together at school. Grayson listened to them talk and felt complete happiness. After eating, the girls played on the blanket, rolling on the grass, tickling each other, laughing at silly things that only sisters find funny. Grayson watched them, trying to record that moment in his memory forever. His two daughters, so physically similar but so different in personality, complementing each other perfectly. Ruby, with her natural kindness and infinite creativity. Junie, with her contagious energy and generous heart. They were playing making grass angels, lying down with their arms outstretched, laughing because the grass tickled. "Dad, come make grass angels with us," shouted Junie. "Come on," insisted Ruby. Grayson joined them, lying on the grass between the two girls. The three of them lay there looking at the blue sky, listening to the birds sing. "Dad," Ruby said softly, "yes. Thank you for adopting me. Thank you for letting us adopt you. And thank you, Junie, for wanting a sister. Thank you for being the perfect sister for me." Grayson closed his eyes and took a deep breath. There, lying on the grass in his garden, with his two daughters by his side, he understood something profound about legacy and inheritance. It wasn't the material possessions that mattered. It wasn't the house, the money, or any physical thing he could leave them. The true inheritance he was building was this: the unconditional love he had taught Junie to have for Ruby, the trust he had helped Ruby develop, the family they had built together moment by moment, choice by choice. This was the true inheritance he would leave, not what he had given them, but what they had built together. "Dad, are you crying?" asked Junie, noticing the tears in his eyes. "They're happy tears," he explained. "How can tears be happy?" asked Ruby. "Sometimes happiness is so big it doesn't just fit in your heart, so it comes out through your eyes too." The girls laughed and snuggled closer to him. "We're full of happiness too," said Ruby. "So much it can't even fit," Junie agreed. They stayed there until the sun began to set, just enjoying being together, officially and forever a family. When they finally went inside,